I see Auditor Maroon here, a few other friendly faces. And we are joined by Director Driscoll Dunham, Corey, Director Burke, and Paul Calabufo with Vail. What, is it Vio or Vail?
Vio, yeah.
Vio.
Yeah. Usually if you're that close, though.
I was saying Vail for so long. All right, so Vio. For those of you who have asked, I know we've had a lot of interest and questions about our bike and scooter program, so we're going to have that conversation today. Joining us now is Councilor Caldwell as well. So we are going to have that conversation today. Are you guys presenting first?
Thank you.
Okay. Nothing's working? Okay. So for folks at home, we will not be having a visual presentation, but they will be reading off the slides and updating us and educating us on facts about VO. What's that? You got me. VO.
So if I could just say, also co-sponsoring and co-hosting this meeting with Councilor Driscoll, I'm the committee chair for public transportation, and as counselors, I think we can all attest to getting volumes of calls daily, weekly. So this meeting really is with the goal to educate and inform, especially as counselors who are, I think, frontline ambassadors for this program. I think it's great the program is here, so if we can get everybody on the same page with good information, then I think it can only lead to greater success. So thank you all for coming today.
I hope the counselors don't mind if I sit.
No.
Rather
please.
than stand at the mic.
Yeah.
Please.
I did wear heels because it's a special day, but it's going to hurt my feet. Okay. You got it. Okay.
It's not easy over here.
It's not. It's not. So thank you, counselors, for the opportunity to talk about this. As the slides indicate, just kind of an overview of our presentation. So we're going to just touch briefly on selecting VO. Talk a little bit about the VO staff, and obviously Paul is here from VO, so he can speak to that with more authority. Talk about the current status, some of the metrics from year to date so far, and how the program is going. I mean, year to date, what did we launch in March or so? So, and then we're going to talk some rules of the road to address some of the concerns that we've heard from the community, and then open it up for questions and concerns. Selecting VO, in the spring of 2021, the city issued an RFP for a shared mobility system. As some of you remember, we did have a previous partner in Gotcha, but that did not pan out. And so we issued a new RFP, and we talked about in the RFP some of our priorities that we were looking for in selecting a vendor. So, addressing the first mile, last mile concerns in relation to public transportation. Obviously, Centro or other means of public transportation can't take you to your exact location. And so this is really meant to try and either, maybe get you to the Central stop where you can pick up the bus, or once the Central bus drops you off, this can help you get to your destination. So, and Neil can speak more about first mile, last mile, but in my attempt to imitate a transportation planner, I believe that's the general thought. Obviously, non-motorized travel between cultural attractions, economic hubs. We thought this would provide we were looking to provide a reliable, affordable option for folks, both residents and visitors to the city. Encouraging people to get where they need to go somewhere other than a private vehicle. And really the last one is creating an attraction that contributes to Syracuse's efforts to be a growing city. I think New York City introduced their bike share program in 2013, so we're certainly not among the first to do this, but if we really want to be a growing city, we really saw efforts in micro-mobility as really important. So we issued the RFP, VO was selected, and Paul will speak more to this, but it's, founded in 2017. And when you look at the landscape of these types of providers, they're sort of, the elderly statesmen in the room at this point, because, a number of programs, including Gotcha, just have not made it. And so have either been acquired by other companies or just no longer operating. And they operate in over 40 locations nationwide. So in terms of the actual staff that's in the area, So the program manager is Paul Calabufo, who is here today. There are currently 7 staff members, and they are really working across the city, balancing fleet issues, addressing concerns. They have a local headquarters, Tipperary Hill, and so that gives them the ability to respond to any place in the city that might need attention relatively quickly. They have a van that is circulating the city, working to balance the fleet and respond to issues. And given the demand that VO has seen, they're bringing on a second van to address those issues, so that we would have 2 vans deployed throughout the city. So in terms of the current stats, since the program has launched, total riders were over 12,000 riders with over 40,000 rides. And so, and some of you might have seen the article this morning in Syracuse.com, that's averaging over 1,000 rides per day. I think last week with the warm weather, Paul, you said 1,400 rides a day. A day. So that really demonstrates the demand that we're seeing with the service. The average ride distance is 2 miles, which I think kind of speaks to that first mile, last mile, that people aren't taking these, necessarily all the way across the city, but they're using it to either get to where they need to go to, which is a shorter distance, or, if they're at a Centro stop, using it to get to their final destination. Again, reflecting the distance, the average ride time is about 11 minutes. And for those who don't know vehicles, it's $1 to unlock, and then there's a per minute cost that varies from 20 cents to 35 cents depending on the vehicle. So as many of you know, there are 3 different types of vehicles that are available. There are stand-up scooters, sit-down scooters, and e-assist bikes. And right now there are 350 or so that are currently deployed, but VO has, I think, 500 in the area, and as the program continues, we'll be deploying more. So rules of the road. I came up with that myself. So with any new micromobility system, there's obviously going to be a learning curve for new riders. And I think VO, having worked in other municipalities, can attest to the fact that what we're experiencing right now is not anything unique to Syracuse. This is really, and there have been articles in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal of other municipalities and questions about kind of the abandoned bikes. So VO it operates as a point-to-point service. So people ride to where they need to go to and they park it there. We were deliberate in not having people limit to, you have to ride to a hub. That's where you have to go to, and you have to park the bike at the hub. We really wanted this to be flexible and address the needs that people have to get to where they need to go. And so, as you can see, it's not it doesn't have to be parked in a hub. There's certainly incentives for people to do that, but they don't have to. And all the units are tracked by GPS, and there are instructions on how to properly park the vehicle. That's part of every ride. Once you end your ride, in order to end the ride so that you stop getting charged, you need to take a photo of where you've parked the vehicle. And then that photo is kept on file for VO staff to reference. And so you are demonstrating, I have parked this vehicle, scooter or bike, according to VO's rules. And so there is photographic evidence that that has happened. But again, things happen. I had a family member witness somebody had parked one around Nottingham High School. It appeared to be properly parked. Somebody came along and tried to see if they could ride it without paying for it, which, surprisingly, VO thought of that, and you can't ride them unless you pay for them. Yeah, well, they're very into micromobility around Nottingham. And so they ended up, dumping it, which, obviously that person's going to learn that next time they see a parked bike that you can't just pick it up and ride it along. So that's part of the learning curve. But, the person who submitted it would have had the photo that demonstrated I did have it parked properly. It's that somebody else came along and took care of it. So there are also, obviously members of the public who see scooters and bikes that might not be properly parked. They can always call, they can email. There's contact information on the website. And, I will admit that one of the things that are still kind of a work in progress is us working with VO to really get more information out there of where if people have concerns, who they can call, who they can reach out to, and also explaining to people that the city didn't just set these things up and then, get out of here. I mean, we do have, VO has vans that are constantly driving around the city to address issues. And so I think the more that we can get that message out, the more people will understand that this is how the program works and looks, and that, you're not going to have a scooter or a bike that's left there for weeks at a time. That's just not how it operates. So in terms of total complaints this year, so there have been 280 total complaints. 278 of those, so 99%, have been fully addressed and closed out. There are some that, for reasons I'm not going to go into because I don't want to encourage any other behavior, we've had a couple complaints that can't be resolved right away, but that is not resulting in scooters or bikes parked somewhere that are not being picked up. It's a separate issue. But 82% of those complaints, so 227 of those complaints, were addressed the very same day. And so I think that demonstrates that VO is very responsive to the concerns that they receive from residents and members of the community. I think it's on us to get that information out there to more residents and more members of the community so that they know there's a place to go if you have concerns.
Can I ask a quick
Yeah.
clarifying question on that?
Sure.
So these complaints, are they going into VO or are they going to City Line, or how is that?
So, go ahead, Neil, you want to?
So both. If they come to the city, we direct them to VO. So it's VO. It's on them as part of their contract to deal with all of the complaints. So even though we get them to City Line, sometimes they'll filter down to Public Works or maybe to the mayor's office. We all just end up routing them back to VO.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even if it's like a sidewalk issue where it's blocking the sidewalk, which is city domain, they have the responsibility to manage
Correct.
that. Okay, great.
So in terms of complaint frequency, I think the previous week there were about 1,400 rides per day, and we saw a total of 17 complaints for the entire week. So as a share of the rides, the complaints generated are relatively small. 2 weeks before that, there were 1,200 riders per day and a total of 30 complaints for the week. So obviously, as time is going on, the frequency of the complaints is going down, and we hope that's a result of getting the word out, which again, there is more work that we can do there, and also people just getting used to the fact that, and I'm guilty of it too. I think, I saw a couple bikes parked on East Genesee Street, and I saw them in the morning, and then when I came back in the afternoon, I saw them, and so I reached out to VO, and having talked to Neil and Eric, learned that that's okay. It's okay because by the next morning those vehicles were gone, and I'm pretty confident it's because somebody found those bikes and decided to take them for a ride. But if not, VO again is very responsive in picking them up. It's just people getting used to the fact that it's not. This is part of the business model to have bikes parked, in between the sidewalk and the street is the ideal location. When they're on sidewalks, that's not what is supposed to happen, but, that this is just going to be part of our landscape.
Corey, I have a question.
Yeah, of course.
Where are all the bikes located in?
The hubs?
Yeah, the hubs.
Yeah,
do we have a list of the hubs?
Yeah, we can, Neil, we have that information. We can share with the council a map of where the hubs are located, but Neil, if you want to speak to that more generally.
Yes, so the hubs are located in the same locations that they were with the previous provider, which was Gotcha. So they are still stationed around the city. Only a few of them have moved. It's all available on the website. It's also available in the app. But as we move forward with our new website on the city's end, we're going to push that information out and host it on a static page.
So just, is it located in all the city of Syracuse? Or?
Yeah, we've spread these around to just about every neighborhood. There are a few spots, specifically down in the South Valley towards the edge of town, and some spots far out on the east side that don't have a hub yet, but we're always looking at new locations.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, there are areas that, areas of interest, the Southwest Community Center,
Southwest is one of our most popular hubs. But yeah, I guess this is a good segue from the old program to the new one. So a few years ago, we started with a company called Gotcha, and they were hub-based. So people got used to going from hub to hub, and that was it. There was no in between. It's no surprise that that business model did not work out and that company is no longer in existence. So we've transitioned from just staying with the hubs. We kept those locations because they're good places for VO to balance the items and put them back, because people think of those areas. They think that they'll be able to, if they need an item, they can go to that location and get it. So we kept those items, but you're not required to end your ride there anymore. But it is where we balance the system still.
But on one little note, because I've asked this question before, and I think it's important for everybody to know, aren't there some credit programs, if they do go to a hub, they might get a credit? It's like a...
Yes, so there's always ongoing promotions that prompt you to bring this back to a hub. There are certain hubs that rotate around the city. They're called Lucky Hubs, and you get a credit, basically. So once you park your ride, you take your picture, it's verified, you get some of that money back that you just spent. It's not every hub all the time, but we do rotate them across neighborhoods to encourage that behavior.
I just want to make sure, I mean, I'm not sure where the hubs are, and I'll look at it, thank you. I just want to make sure in some of the parts of the city, especially like the valley area where there's like a food desert, where people have to sort of get to stores, it would be nice to have access to more.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So in terms of the complaints, VO has found that, 9 out of 10 times with complaints, they were alerting VO to scooters that callers thought the vehicles had been misplaced, but they were actually parked properly, which isn't a knock against the callers. I think it just shows that, this is something that we're gradually getting used to. And as the community adapts to how the program works and also how the program looks, we expect complaints to drop in frequency. And like I said, VO operates in other markets, including, New York City and other places. And this is a similar trend that they've seen in other markets when programs first launched, that it's something that the community just, needs to, again, there's more communication that we can do on our end to inform people, but as they adjust, there's a drop in the frequency of complaints. But for complaints that that are founded, VO has issued 150 violations to riders this season based on submitted complaints. And there's really a tier system where, the majority of the violations so far have been a warning. So the first time is a warning. The second violation, the user would be charged $25. The third time, they would be charged $50, and any subsequent issues could result in suspension of the program, and you're excluded from it altogether and removed from the system. So, I think that the majority of them have been warnings. I think is helpful because it demonstrates to riders that there is an element of accountability, but that hopefully the behavior is being corrected over time.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So how are those issued? Is it on the picture taking part of the rental?
You got to come up to the mic, Paul.
Announce yourself.
Yeah, introduce yourself, Paul.
Sure. Paul Calabufo, Operations Manager for VO. The system we use is we have techs out in the field changing batteries and rebalancing into the hubs. And when we see one that's on the sidewalk or, blocking an access ramp, anything that you're not supposed to do, we have on our end in our app a way to input that as a violation. So they can report the violation on the app, they take a picture, and then that comes to me. And I will compare what our tech saw in the field with the picture that the customer took when they ended their ride. So, like in the in the instance of that Nottingham one, I can look and see, they parked it responsibly in the right of way, and now it's over here across the street, laying on its side. So I would not issue a violation for that. But if you see the picture and it's parked irresponsibly in the picture and it's looking the same with how our tech found it, then they get the violation. And that's how the system works.
So it's not instant. If they take the picture and it's in an improper place,
It's not an instant.
wrong place, try again. Okay,
No, correct. We have to do it manually.
got it. Thank you.
Yep.
So again, the VO staff are in the field 24/7 dealing with these issues, and there is a phone number, again, that it's provided on every scooter and bike. For me driving by, I didn't have time or the ability to hop out and see it, but if somebody's walking by and sees one, the phone number is on the bike or the scooter for people to call, but also, we will step up our efforts to communicate that to the community so that they just know there is a place to go. And so, I guess just in conclusion, we think that despite some of the bumps and adapting to how a system like this works and looks in our community. You know, we think largely given the number of rides that we're averaging per day, there's obviously a need, I think, from the community to have this type of service. And sometimes it's for fun, and sometimes it's out of necessity because you need to get to where you need to go. And just to have this option, I think, is really helpful. And so we're pleased with the partnership with VO, and just welcome any questions or concerns.
Has there been any effort to find out where people are going? I mean, to Councilor Caldwell's question, I mean, not only for recreation, but, you know, for driving around,
Sure.
having fun stuff. Are any people using this to get to work and things? I think,
Yeah, go ahead,
Sure,
Paul.
So in the winter, when things were slow, as you might imagine, and I was looking forward to us getting the scooters in, that was like Christmas morning to me. I put a lot of time into where to put the hubs, which I was kind of itching to talk about since you asked. And for me, what's important and why I took this job is being that last mile transportation for people that take the bus, and also just being the sole mode of transportation for somebody that doesn't have a car and needs to get around. That is the bread and butter of the program. It's great that somebody wants to ride it for fun, but the base should be helping people that need to get around the city. So I put a very large amount of time into meeting with the Syracuse Metropolitan Transportation Council. I got all kinds of maps of where the highest pedestrian activity is, where the most popular bus routes are, where the most popular bus stops are. I can tell you we have a hub at every single one of the most popular bus stops in Syracuse. I can tell you that our usage, so one of the easy ways you can tell if somebody is using joyriding versus using it as a commute is in the cities where it's mostly joyriding, they get low ridership all week and then tons of ridership on the weekend. We get essentially the same amount of ridership every day, which is it's an indication that people are using it to commute. And this is a bit anecdotal, but yesterday there was severe weather. I was outside changing batteries all day long. I can tell you it was not a fun experience when you get used to 80 degrees and then it's 65 and raining. It hits pretty cold. It's not real fun to scooter around in. And we got 700 rides yesterday. I would venture to guess that 0 of those were joy rides. I would say pretty close to 0 were people that said, you know, I have a working car, but I just want to take a scooter out in the thunder and the lightning and the rain. I think those are 700 rides that were people that need the scooters to get around. And I would say if you're looking for a baseline, yesterday's number, and also if you look, we have 350 scooters out yesterday. 700 is each one being used twice, almost to the number. I think it was just a little under 700. So it was almost exactly, and you think 2 trips, that's to work and from work, or to the store and from the work store. I think that is if you're looking for the base of how many people are using this because they need it to get around, I think that 700 number is probably a pretty accurate number.
you know, I think there's ancillary advantages. We have a lot of stressed neighborhoods with parking and all that. We talk all the time about housing and things where people come in and want to build housing, affordable housing in our neighborhoods, but there's not parking. They worry about parking, and anything like that, they can relieve that stress. And I was thinking what Councilor Green has always pushed for as far as parking for like commercial establishments, even for fun. You know, instead of taking your car and looking for a place down, you know, parking spot downtown, you'd be able to take this. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have 350 of them?
Yeah, right now at this moment there are 350 outside. It's a variable thing as our mechanics fix things, and we have probably about 50 that came in for whatever reason, got fixed, are ready to come out, but we just the last week we had a lot of rides and we were going 24 hours a day, literally just breakneck as fast as we could go to try to keep up. So I just didn't have time to say, take a minute, load the van up with scooters, drop them around at the hubs. So we have a little bit of a backlog in the warehouse right now, but at the moment at 350 is the number.
That's the total devices of the 3.
All 3, that's what we have out available for rent right now.
A quick question, Paul. So I haven't used the system that much because I own a bike and I ride it pretty much everywhere and I love it. But I'm curious when they use it in that sense. So say the example Councilor Caldwell was talking about, you go to a grocery store, you ride it over there, you get your groceries. What happens in the interim between when you park it out in front of the grocery store and you go in and buy your groceries? Are you having to pay for it the whole time? Or if you park it, what if someone else comes by and sees it and now it's no longer functioning and then you're 2 miles from your house and someone else came and took, how does that whole situation work when you're going to and
So
from?
you don't pay for the whole time, you only pay for when you ride. When you park it, it is available for anybody to rent. So that is the worry. And I will tell you, I was telling Councilor Schultz before this, I take almost every, like those 280 complaints, I probably went to at least 250 of them myself. I try to take it myself because it's time consuming and I need my we call them technicians out in the field changing batteries. I can't just have them going, and talking to customers all day. So I usually do that myself. 9 out of 10 are people that they live in areas that are underserved and they're not used to having new amenities. And the complaint is basically like, this ended up in my neighborhood. It must have been stolen or misplaced there, which I find a little sad, but it also motivates me to, make the product good for them. So I spend extra time there and I make sure that I'm talking to people, and I talk to a lot of people that say exactly that, hey, I need this to get to work. Can you make sure it's around? I need it to get to work. Can you make sure it's a battery? And all I can tell you is I can't guarantee that for anyone, but I've been working like 9:30 a.m. to 11 p.m. pretty much every day, because you hear that story and you can't not respond to that. Like you have to be there for the people that need that. So it's something that's near and dear to my heart. It's something that is extremely important to me. I think the fact that people are using it consistently every day shows that it mostly works and it is pretty reliable. The nice thing about having a large amount of scooters is that it's usually not your example is like, what if I have to walk 2 miles? I don't think anybody would have to walk 2 miles to get to a scooter. We have a lot of scooters out. You might have to walk a little bit. You might have to walk a few blocks. I don't think you'd have to walk like an inordinate amount of, distance to get to the next scooter.
So you'd be able to find that in your app.
Yeah, when you open the app, it tells you where every scooter in the city is. It tells you how much battery is left in each one, and it tells you the price. So you can look and say, well, yeah, I can't afford the 35-cent one today. Maybe I'll go with the cheaper option. And where's that? All right, it's around the corner. I turn over here. You can also ring each one. So if you're, whatever reason, it's laying down on its side, you can make it beep. Every customer can. Obviously, we can, so they can find it.
Does it light the blue lights on the
It
bottom as well?
lights up and it beeps. Yeah.
There's the answer to that. To that point, though, raises an idea. Would it be possible in the future to have like bike locks that users can pay to store it, say for an hour? I want to reserve this bike. It wouldn't be the same fee as riding it.
I think that it is possible that there is a hold feature where you can ride it to a destination and hold it so that nobody else can take it for, say, it would be a limited amount of time. So let 20, 30 minutes maybe. So you can go to the store, put on the hold feature and go do your shopping and come back. VO is very responsive. Having worked for Gotcha, which didn't make it, I can tell you I think we're pretty lucky to have VO. They're very responsive. They saw that we are getting a lot of rides. To brag a little bit, this last week we were number 2 in the country for total rides. Our fleet is one of the smaller ones. There's I think our biggest fleet has 2,500 scooters out. We got more rides than them, not per scooter, total. Overall. We got almost double the rides that New York City got, despite them having millions more people and a culture of not taking cars and having 1,000 scooters to our 350. We get almost double the amount of rides total. The need is here, the want is here, the usage is here, and VO is paying attention. They look at those numbers, they talk to me every day about them, and they okayed me to get a second van. And I want to kind of relate, like that is a big investment. It's not just a van. That's double the amount of employees, right? So if I have 7 employees to go 24 hours a day in one van, it's 14 employees to go 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in 2 vans. So it's a pretty big investment. And I think that they, pulled that trigger pretty quick. They looked at the ridership and they said, you know what, like, do it, take care of things, make it all nice. So I think that I'm very excited about it. I picked it up on Monday, and yesterday, I also hired 4 people. So it's exciting. They're not in and trained yet, but it's coming, and I think that will help. I think that will help with complaints. I think you'll see more scooters in hubs than you do, around, because my basic plan is right now one van has to do everything, right? They have to. That's why I go around in my car separately to try to ease that burden. But with 2 vans, then we can have one go around and change all the batteries, and one just going around constantly picking up scooters and putting them into hubs. Generally, they don't last in hubs. They're generally gone in an hour. I could put 10 scooters in any given hub in the city. They'll be gone in an hour. So it's hard to keep scooters in hubs. So I think it requires something that's just nonstop, day and night, just putting them back in. Because for me, the function of hubs is I want customers to know, all right, I know I can get one in this spot. There's this spot that's kind of it's a noticeable spot. It's someplace where people are. It's, someplace in the neighborhood that you walk past every day, and I know there's going to be scooters there. Right now, there's not always. We put scooters in hubs every day, but that's not enough because they don't stay there for very long. So we just need to constantly be replenishing, and I'm excited about our increased capacity to do so.
Well, from a national or international perspective, do you have any data on networking effects in the sense that, as there's more scooters, more people use it because they're more available to go different places? Do we think there's, growth that's incremental because
Yeah, I don't have any national statistics on that. My sense from looking at like the numbers of every market is that it is very market specific. I have a pretty strong sense of what's going on in Syracuse. I'm on the streets all day, every day. And my sense is that the more scooters we get in hubs, the more we are nowhere close. I think I told this to you yesterday in our interview. We are Bambi at the beginning of the movie with the shaky legs. We are brand new. We are figuring it out. We're trying to pay attention to the data, but I can tell you that, when they are in the hubs, those scooters get rented like that. That to me is a sign that the demand is higher than what we can provide for right now. And that is across the city. That is north side, east side, west side, south side. That is everywhere in the city. There's not one hub I couldn't put 10 scooters at right now that those 10 scooters wouldn't be gone in an hour, assuming the weather's good. So my sense is that we are at the bottom of the curve. We are at just the tip of what we can do, and that Syracuse is a really pretty bikeable, scootable city, and that there are a lot of people without cars. There's a lot of people that even have cars and don't particularly want to stop and drive around and take that time and spend that money for gas. If there's a kind of a fun way to be outside and do that, and that when people do it, they tend to do it. That's another thing which we're very high on customers that use it more than once. So that's a metric that they keep. Like a lot of customers in every city will try it once for whatever reason. They might be tourists. They might just have tried it once just to try it, and then they never use it again. Here, that's not a large amount of our people. It's our people tend to use it more than once they try it.
Question about the usability of the devices. So Corey mentioned that the scooters you can't use unless there's money in them, but the bikes you can. Is there any technology coming to lock those pedals so that if there's no money in them, they can't be ridden as a normal bike?
It's a great question. I have put that to the company. I think that so there is a resistance to it, and it's not comfortable to pedal. But people still seem to be doing it.
8-year-olds are mastering it, let me tell you.
Yeah, so it's actually, I think you see more younger people doing it than older because it's an awkward ride for an older person. Vito's, like I said, they're very responsive to these kinds of things, but that was one of the first things I came to them and said, listen, this is a problem. generally, they're not taken very far. It might just be a couple feet. But any movement is not good, because if it just happens to be, it's not a constant communication with the app. It's like every minute or so it'll get a ping. So if it just so happens to be in between, so somebody could possibly come and see, oh, there's a scooter in this area, but somebody could have physically moved it and not rented it, and it could actually be the other side of the block, say. And then they'll go to that spot and won't be there. So that's a problem. I'll say that we are aware of it and we are working on it. That solution is going to be with some tech person that's probably a lot smarter than me. So I don't know exactly what the fix is going to be, but it is in the works.
Is it helpful for people to report that kind of activity? Because I can tell you there's a whole group of kids in the first district who ride them as if they are their bikes. So
Yeah, I think it's helpful. So one of the things I try to do, if I know there's a place with like repeat offenders, I will not cut scooters off from any part of the city.
No.
It just is something I'm unwilling to do. But what I will do is take those bikes away and replace them with the stand-up scooters. I think that's, something that's a reasonable reaction to places where that seems to be happening a lot. So that's kind of our solution, is when we see it, we pull right up. We're not afraid to talk to anybody. We're not afraid to knock on doors. I do that all day long. So we'll just, hey, I'm not confrontational about it. I generally just say, oh, hey, I need to change that battery, or the company says I need to work on that.
Don't give your secrets away, Paul.
I know.
Who knows who's watching?
I shouldn't.
Those 8-year-olds are probably tuned into the YouTube channel watching this.
their phones.
Yeah.
But yeah, nobody ever gives any pushback. They give it right over. And then, like I said, I'll go find a stand-up scooter. If I have one in the van, I'll put it right there, so that neighborhood is the equal amount of coverage. My processes and my teams, when we are addressing scooters and rebalancing, I don't like to leave the area with any. So if we need to rebalance on the south side, we rebalance to a hub on the south side. I don't like to take something out of the south side and bring it to downtown. Now, people ride them to different areas, so sometimes that's necessary, but generally my kind of rule of thumb is keep it in the area where it is, so that area has the same amount of coverage and access that it should have.
Another question, sorry, for Corey and possibly for Neil. Article 7 of the Syracuse City ADA, can you comment on the fact that cleaning and maintenance of sidewalks is a responsibility of the occupant or the owner, and that no sidewalk shall have obstructions, blah, 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 so.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we want to try and we don't want to try and get into the city handling VO's equipment. I mean, we have a clear arrangement with them, and so if we know of one that is blocked, I know if as a city employee, if I'm driving down East Genesee Street and I see one that's blocked, I call VO to come, and I would call VO to come and get it. So, I mean, I think we can't. We just want to have there be a clear line between what VO is responsible for and what the city is responsible for, because
And what the homeowner's responsible for.
and what the homeowner
But
responsible
This article
for.
specifically states it's the homeowner's job to keep their sidewalks
Right.
clear of
And
debris or obstruction.
Yeah, and I
So-
think part of that is the communication that we still need to work on. That if you are a homeowner and somebody dumps a bike in your sidewalk, and you're concerned about it, you can. The best thing I would think would be to move it off of the sidewalk and put it, into the snow shelf, or basically the area between the street and your sidewalk, to make sure that it's someplace that's not blocked. So, but I think the fact that VO is responsive, that 80+% of the complaints are resolved within the same day, and that they're bringing on another van, I really am confident that those complaints, over time will decrease. I mean, we certainly have cars that park over sidewalks, and it's certainly not unique to these scooters and bikes. I mean, the good news is it's a lot easier to move a scooter or a bike from a sidewalk than it is to go get the driver of the car and tell them to move. So, blocking sidewalks is an issue. It remains a priority for us, and we're just glad to have VO as a partner that's willing to respond quickly to take care of those issues.
Most of the complaints I've got are just from people that it's a newness of it.
Yeah.
They didn't know what it was. So, and then when you explain it to them, but this information is You know, myself and Councilor Schultz were at a meeting last night with the mayor, and this came up. And having this information is really important.
Yeah,
I
and
would say
admittedly,
9
know,
out of 10
police-
complaints are just simply that. There's a scooter here, like, I don't think it's supposed to be here. And once you just explain, like, actually it can, it's fine. There's, people are allowed to ride it to their home. They're allowed to ride it wherever they're going. And that's generally, people leave happy, like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. And that's it. And I think you do get a little, some people will call angry because they don't want to get blamed. It will be like on the sidewalk in front of their house, and they'll say, this needs to move, because they're worried someone will blame them for it. And then once they realize, like, oh, it's our job to come pick it up, and we do it, and we will be there, then that generally pacifies that complaint.
Yeah,
pretty
and
well.
I think to your point, Councilor Hogan, we just need to keep doing public awareness and public education to folks. I think the more people learn about it and are aware this is how it's supposed to operate, if you see a problem, this is what you can do, this is who you can call. I think hopefully it'll decrease over time, and people will see that this is a really valuable service for us to have for city residents.
And Paul says he's going to have reduced fees for senior citizens, so myself and Mayor.
You want that e-assist, right? I don't know. Are you gonna do the stand-up scooters or the little like moped type things? Yeah, we're gonna have a little bike gang.
One question, sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, go ahead.
Corey, I think that this has broader policy implications for our zoning in the sense that, like, when we started rezone, I don't think this technology even existed.
True.
Which is a testament to rezone's length. But have we shared any of this data with them? Because I do think there's been some projects that have come along where a lot of the pushback has been it's physically impossible to live in Syracuse without a car. And I think this does change some of that calculus. And is that something we've shared any of this data?
Yeah, no, that's a really good. Eric, do you want to speak to that?
All right, hey, councilors. Well, I wasn't sure if I was going to get the chance to speak here, but Eric Ennis, Neighborhood and Business Development. So to that point, councilor, within rezone, one of the things that's been done is being able to reduce the parking minimum requirements. And one of the things is there's a broad definition of a transportation center, a transportation hub, can qualify as something as small as a bus stop for Centro. And then we have the ability for bike share infrastructure. If there's a bike hub that we've identified on a map, you have the ability for your project to be able to have a reduction in your parking minimums. I think they go in like increments of 20, but that capability, being able to build that in and have that justification is a great tool as part of the development process. And Councilor Hogan, I think you brought up this point, thinking about business corridors, thinking about mixed use development or affordable housing developments. Not all these projects require one car per household. In fact, it could be likely less. So this tool, being able to connect downtown, being able to connect our neighborhood business corridors. So rezone gives us that flexibility. I think what it's going to be incumbent on us to be able to look at that as part of projects that are going through the review process. But, it's something, Neil and I have been talking about. I while I'm up here really quick, just want to emphasize, I think this being an economic development tool, it's one of the huge reasons why I got involved in the early stages. Neil and Paul, VO has been a tremendous partner, and over the last year we've seen a huge increase in the utilization and all the efforts that have gone in. There are communities now where you go visit and this is an expectation to have access to this tool. Thinking about cities like whether it's Nashville or San Diego, or we're competing with cities in the South and our percentages are higher. I think that speaks to the culture and just how we've changed that. Even in a short amount of time, I'm seeing more and more and more people get comfortable with it. And I think some of the videos that were shared, you're seeing some awkwardness the first time you use it. Candidly, it was awkward the first time you used an electric toothbrush. So I think that I think quickly you're seeing people in this community really gravitate towards it. And I think the video that was just put out by Paul and the video team, it really explains it really nicely, how to use it. And after, a couple tries, you're going to very quickly be able to use this technology. But we've been talking to property owners and developers when they're having new residential tenants, they're promoting this and being able, instead of getting in your car, or if you're an office tenant, I think that for a long time, if you were on one block of downtown, we're talking about thousands of people that are here in downtown Syracuse, it opens up the option of whether it's a lunch break or whether you're taking the opportunity to go and support a local business. You're not just confined to 1 or 2 blocks within your office anymore. You now have the ability within minutes to be really, in different sections of the city, supporting different areas that maybe you couldn't before. So just want to kind of promote that, as I think that we're talking about convenience, we're talking about transportation, we're talking about people that if you have a fixed route and if you have need to get to your job and you're using Centro is a fixed route system. You can create your own route to be able to create new job opportunities. And so I think it's particularly around a second shift or third shift, we're seeing great use from the refugee and new American communities now, because they can just literally hop on a scooter or a bike. So just wanted to emphasize, I think, economic development being a really key part of how we're trying to use this system wisely.
Yeah, and I'll be happy to circulate the video as well. It's had I gotten the computer to work, but no, it's and again, I think Neil touched on this. The as we launch the city website and we have an easier ability to highlight those things and make it easier for our residents to find information on our website, I think that's going to be a real game changer as well. I know we've been promoting it on social media, but obviously it needs to be on the city website as well.
So a developer like a new building downtown, we're always, like Councilor Green talks about, less parking, parking spaces, we're sick of parking lots. So somebody could say, I want a rack, a bike rack or something like that, maybe pay for it. Could they do something like that? We could put that in rezone maybe?
I know the approach we've been taking is that Paul has been incredibly responsive so Salt City Market is a really good example. As the project came online, we literally made the introduction for Paul. Paul met on site with the team. We now have a hub in the back of the property and we have a hub in the front of the property. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that is our single highest spot that's getting, the most amount of traction and activity.
I would have to look. So I think judging hubs is not the best judge because
It's a judgment-free zone.
Keeping them in the hubs because they get used so often. But I when you look at the heat map, honestly, the north side is getting a tremendous amount of use. So like from Butternut Street all the way over to Regional Market, that area is just booming.
And so I think, but to speak to that, I think what our intent is, as we're looking at new development opportunities where, again, focusing on the ability of not just having access to a car or looking at parking requirements, directly making the introduction so that VEO can actually kind of do a consultation and look at, how they can collaborate.
One quick
Yeah.
note to that parking consideration. I do think that it really isn't a one-size-fits-all as far as the parking impact goes. So the complaints I get from constituents are when they're parked in neighborhoods versus city streets. I'm never going to get a complaint that it's at Salt City, regardless if it's in a hub or on the sidewalk, because it just makes sense in a commercial district that's wider lanes, and it's just, it's not their house, so they don't really care. But when it is in a neighborhood, I've had several scooters in the first district just sitting there on corners for more than 3 days, and neighbors are really kind of fed up about it. They don't want it in their front yard. So can we encourage them to move them up to James Street, put them near a Centro bus stop, or is that okay to do? Because
I think they would certainly be encouraged to move them to the hubs, which I think VO does. I think the issue is that we obviously can't put a hub on every corner, and so we do want to have these things dispersed through the city so that if you do live, 5 or 6 blocks in from James Street, there's an opportunity perhaps to have a bike or a scooter somewhere closer to you than the business corridor. But Paul, you probably know.
Yeah. So I started tracking the location of each complaint. I did it for the last 50 complaints just to try to get a sense of, do we need to implement a special program in some area that's seeing a lot of complaints? Some interesting findings there is one, we're seeing virtually no complaints from our areas of highest ridership. The complaints tend to be in the areas where there isn't as much ridership and it's new. So when people are like, what is this doing here? That's where we get the complaints. It's really, you could kind of just draw a circle around the outskirts of the city, and that's where the complaints are. I didn't really see any one area that was getting a high amount of complaints, but
the counselor complaints don't get tracked in your line.
fair enough.
Sure to pass those along.
Yeah, I definitely do pass them along because that's how I know. And I also, not only that, I want to be able to address it. I don't want somebody, because here's the thing, I really don't think there was ever a scooter sitting in one place for a couple of weeks. What I think is, from my perspective, we track it from the last ride. So what could happen and what probably has happened is somebody comes, rides it, and then rides it back and leaves it there. So that was not going to show up on my tracker as sitting there. If it's sitting there, we're going to come get it. But from somebody's perspective that's just looking outside their house when they get home from work, oh, that scooter has been there every time. It's never moved. Nobody's touching it. But that's actually not the case.
Yeah.
Or at least not the way from my eyes, right? When I turn on my app and I look at what there is to do, that doesn't come up for me. But for them, they're seeing, oh, the scooter's always in the same place. So that's where complaints are helpful, because if that's bothering somebody, then I want to be able to address that. So there's two ways we can kind of address it. We talked a lot about the violations, but there's also encouragement to have people park in hubs. We can pay people to park in hubs, and I'm happy to do that. If you feel like there's a neighborhood or an area where people are not happy, then we can. I think we are in a place now where we need to add more hubs, as outlets for, putting scooters in. So I think we can add more hubs, and we can also pay people to park in those hubs. So I think that's a good way to address the problem as well. We only talked about kind of the negative side where we punish people, but there's also that positive side. And I think that is a equally valuable tool that I am willing, and the company is willing to employ. I've had a little bit of trouble, like I said, from my end, seeing any place where there's just like a high volume. Really seems to be kind of a abstract scatter shot. So any information that anybody can give me, any of you, anybody, I will take that information and put it into our calculations. And I want a system that works, that can't keep 100% of the people happy, but we want to get as close as we can to that number. So
I'll tell you, I have a large event that happens every Thursday night in my neighborhood, right around the corner from my house. Anytime anybody wants to use a scooter instead of driving a car up into that neighborhood, it's terrific. I mean,
it's both of our neighborhoods, and I totally agree with you. Yeah.
You're familiar with that Thursday event?
There's a lot of those, and I can see downtown, I can see people coming downtown to, with scooters for our events and festivities this summer.
I used to walk from Tip Hill downtown all the time, and
How was the walk back?
Right. That's right. What I was going to say is I think it's really not that far, but man, when you have a scooter, it makes all the difference. It's a much more pleasant way to get from Tip Hill to downtown. So,
Paul, from an infrastructure standpoint, I think the reality is you're much more vulnerable as a user when you're on a bike or when you're on a scooter compared to being in a car, and that's the reality of it. And I do think our infrastructure is not built in the perfect way to protect bikers and scooters. And I do think it's a chicken and the egg thing where some people won't ride a scooter because there's not safe infrastructure, and then people that are negative about it will say, well, no one's riding, so therefore we don't need to build infrastructure, right? And I'm curious kind of your perspective, or again, from other cities, what are the recommendations for best practices to build protected lanes and to build things that make it safer? And then what would be the expectation of increased usage if we were to be able to go through with that?
Neil, don't hesitate to jump here, by the way.
yeah, I mean, Neil might be better at answering this than me.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's a great question. So one of the things that we started off with this program in the first round with Gotcha, and we've continued doing with VEO, is placing these hubs and stocking areas that are along existing facilities. So what I mean by that is the creek walk. There are plenty of locations where you can walk up, grab a scooter, grab a bike, whatever it is, and jump on the creek walk. People feel really comfortable using the creek walk, right? It's separated, it's a nice pathway, traverses many different neighborhoods. That's one of the areas we knew we were going to have strong ridership. It's a no-brainer. So we took advantage of that. Another area would be something like connective corridor or other bike lanes that we have around town. So we're stocking there first. And we are keeping track of where people are riding. So if we do see, say, hot spots along an avenue that doesn't have bike facilities now, when that comes up for recon, when it's on the tip, when we're looking at making improvements, that's another piece of information we can use to say, well, we're seeing 500 people a day, scooter or bike up and down this corridor. It's time to take a second look at what we're doing here. So it's useful information, but also we try and preemptively strike with where we're laying out a lot of these units as well.
What about, Jimmy brought up a good question. What about like events that happen just outside the city, like New York State Fairgrounds?
Tough.
Yeah, it's tough.
Tough.
Because there's no infrastructure, really safe infrastructure.
Well, the Vails agreement is with us, so can't speak to anything that they're working on, but we can't, say, hey, go over to the New York State Fairgrounds and Solvay, unfortunately,
I'm
unless,
not saying that, I'm just saying if somebody wants to use it,
It's
you
gonna,
can't do it,
it's
right?
gonna power down, I think, as you leave the city.
yeah, you hit the city line and you're done. It turns off.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
That's good.
So you're gonna have hundreds of these things at the corner of Willis and State Fair Boulevard.
Yeah, and they have to go balance them. That's part of the system.
Yeah. Unless the county wants to do a bike share system.
If Solvay or New York State Fairgrounds or any other partner wants to engage with Veo, we are more than happy to broker that conversation because we see it as a benefit to us. We said this when we started. We wanted to be the example for our municipalities around us. If it works here, we want it to work for you as well. We would much rather have one system that is unified and works together rather than have them go with somebody else. So absolutely willing to help any way we can, but it's really up to Paul and Veo to ink that contract.
Yeah, it might be worth talking to the county legislature, huh?
Well, I think the village is, there's a significant amount of infrastructure money was spent in the village.
Yeah, they have nice looking bike lanes on Milton. I'll say that. So they're probably,
You know,
I'm sure someone thinks they can take a scooter down there. They're just,
administration,
Yeah.
that's a great point. Empire State Trail is a great amenity that'll take you right into DeWitt, but you hit the city line and the thing's going to power down. So DeWitt, if you're watching,
Yeah.
448 City.
Yeah, and then the other way, I mean, Councilor Hogan, you're talking about the infrastructure goes right out. There's dedicated bike lanes to take you pretty much right to the fairgrounds as well.
Yep, great point.
100%, you don't need to ride it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
it
don't-
would work out great, honestly.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. Yeah, if we can make those connections, yeah.
It's not a lot of fun nowadays, so.
Yeah,
It's also not free, right? So
yeah.
Yeah. Right.
That'd be definitely a case where
Yeah.
citizens would save some money if we could team up with Solvay and do it on that. That'd be good.
yeah, I think we're more than happy to try anything that we can do to work with our neighboring municipalities or authorities.
Any other questions?
Sure.
I'm Nate Maroon, the city auditor. First of all, Paul, we all should have his enthusiasm and appreciate what you're doing for the city. And Councilor Green, from the standpoint of, so I was on the council when we started the rezoning, and this was actually a conversation because at that time Paul Mercurio was talking about bike lanes, and the questions did come up relative to scooters. And so I'm glad that you brought that up in terms of the infrastructure around the city. And I guess from the number standpoint, I don't know what statistics and data you collect. So we implemented this at the beginning of March. When it comes into the winter months, what are you anticipating that the ridership might be here?
I can speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, because again, as part of the discussions that we had 5 or 6 years ago now, when we put in the bike lanes, the concern was, well, they wouldn't be used because of our weather. So, and I'm not surprised to hear in the north side with the immigrant population that they would use it. They're used to that from countries that they came to. So, but is there, in terms of the students, are there a lot of ridership in and around the university particularly? So those are a couple questions I have. And thanks again for what you're doing.
Nice to hear a thank you and not a complaint. I'm used to complaining. Really
Thank
nice.
you, Paul.
All right, so let me start with the time of year usage. So I see Syracuse as having 4 distinct seasons of riding. One just started, so that's when the colleges take off for the summer and through the summer. We do see high ridership around, not just Syracuse University, every college. They all have high ridership around them. Students love them. Students use them. They generally have to walk a lot anyways. The parking lots tend to be far away from classes. So we see a lot of usage. The things students give us that we maybe don't have in such big numbers is the willingness to ride scooters when it is 40 degrees, 50 degrees out. That is why in the month of April, I mean, we got snow in the month of April. We were number 2 in the country as far as most rides per scooter. Students help with that because students don't mind riding when it's really cold. They have to be out walking anyways. So that's a little boost in our favor. Come the summer, we're not going to see a drop off because students left, because now it's 70, 80 degrees. People that weren't using it when it was 40, 50 are going to get on it, and that kind of balances that scale. So we're going to see about the same ridership, or probably a little bit more through the summer. And then it's going to get into August, which is our 3rd summer, when students come back, and ridership is going to be our highest in August. August will be that'll be the tip for us. That's when we kind of have scooters using it, students using it all the time, and everybody else using it all the time, and that'll be like the very top of what we do. We had like a soft launch in October. To give some context, for Gotcha, I think the most rides we ever got in a day was like 180. Like 100 rides was a big deal for us to reach 100. So I was pretty surprised to see we just kind of, I don't want to say I dropped them in the middle of the night, but I just literally just put in a van. I was the only employee, took them off the truck, put them in a van, went out and just put them down. No advertising, no nothing. They just showed up there on the corner, locked up one day, and we got like 300 rides a day. And it was like, whoa, did not see that coming. And that was in October. And October days are very good, but it gets dark early and it starts to get cool at night. So we do usually get a lot of nighttime ridership, but you don't get that in October. So that's 300 like by 5 or 6 o'clock. So that leads me to believe with the bigger fleet, with now where people know about us, they know how to use it, they already have the app on their phone, they don't have to say, what is this? Let me Google it. I think we will see very big ridership through October. And even with only like 100 scooters out, we were profitable up through December. So we had good ridership up through December. And then January and February were when the ridership bottomed out. I would think, just so you're ready for this, Neil, I think probably if VO had to decide, they would want to shut down for January and February, because I think they think the money we do make will not offset kind of the beating that the scooters take for being out in the snow. I'm pretty sure, not to speak for the city, but I'm pretty sure they want service in the winter. I personally would like service in the winter. People do use it. It's less. But if somebody wants to use it, I'd like it to be available for them. Because, we're all Syracuse residents. We know what the winter's like. There are days when it's very cold and it snows a lot, and there will be 0 or close to 0 ridership on that day, but that's not every day. There are plenty of days where it's 30, 40 degrees, where if you've got a hat and gloves and a coat on, it's not so bad to scooter around, and the ridership is fine on those days. Not like a summer day when it's 70 degrees, but it's robust enough to me to matter, and I feel like there should be a service for those times. But I would say January and February is that last season when you can expect low rides. And then it's going to come back to March and the spring, and that's when we kind of get students back up on them. And we've seen incredibly high ridership this spring. So,
Thank you, Paul.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you for everybody for coming, especially Paul and Neil and Corey, for the information. Looking forward to the continued education and cooperation with everybody, because the more we can resolve those complaints, perfect success. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.